It's me, Ingrid Lee. Welcome to another episode of Town Square Talks Everything 361, brought to you by Victoria Air Conditioning. Hey everybody, welcome to the second episode of Town Square Talks Everything 361. It is my absolute honor to introduce my second guest. This is CONSTANCE, FILLEY. She's the Victoria County District Attorney. How are you today?
I am doing great. Thank you for having me.
I am so excited that you're here again. So recently you did a Town Square Talks downstairs.
Yes, I did.
All right. Tell us a little bit about what you spoke about.
Really, it was just an informal kind of get to know me talk with some of the people that were in attendance. A lot of the people I knew, so it was a good reunion with some friends and neighbors.
Right. I know, after a year of not being able to visit with tons of people. Now, during that talk, what are some of the things that, you felt important to visit with the community about?
Well, I got to talk about my job and how we approach the job that I do. And so people had some great questions in the audience. So that was a fun opportunity.
Excellent. Well, we're kind of going to get to questions in just a second, but I've got to talk to you about your name, CONSTANCE. That is a heavy name.
It was a big name for a little girl, I have to tell you.
Big name for a little girl. But I love your name. I think it's absolutely beautiful. But
it
is strong, girl. And you got to be pretty strong to be a district attorney.
Absolutely.
So aptly named. Absolutely. Now, one of the things that I know, but I want to discuss with you and let our audience know, is you didn't start out as an attorney.
I did not.
Tell us a little bit about your first job.
So I was a classroom teacher here in Victoria. I am a proud product of VISD Public Schools.
Love it.
Graduated in 1989 from Victoria High School. Don't mind saying it. And then I got an associate's degree from Victoria College and my bachelor's degree from University of Houston, Victoria. So I jumped right in as a classroom teacher here in Victoria. And then I became something called a Safe and Drug-Free Schools Coordinator for Region 3. So I was in education for a little more than a decade before I went back to law school.
So what spurred your interest then in going back to law school?
Well, many of the listeners might know that my dad is the retired criminal district attorney here in Victoria County. So I kind of grew up in that job, always was very interested and admired it from that perspective, and always wanted to go to law school. But life happened. I got married and had two children and taught for a little while. And a little bit after my 30th birthday, realized that it was sort of an hour never moment. My children were young, and if I didn't take that leap to continue my education, that window might close for me when I became a busy mom instead of having that opportunity to be a student. And so I jumped right in and went back to law school.
I'm going to ask you something about that because I find that fascinating. I also find that's very relatable. What advice would you give to a woman who was thinking about finishing her education?
I'd say go for it. I'd say it's never too late. Obviously, I think men and women, we all have a lot to juggle in our own personal lives, but there's not anything that comes up in your own personal life, I think, that closes a door to education or opportunity. Right. You just have to jump in and sometimes be a little bit more tenacious. I definitely had to be creative about, being a mom, juggling those responsibilities.
Absolutely.
And being a law student, especially that first year, it was tough. But I got up a lot of times at 4 a.m. to do the reading that I needed to do and handle all the things that I needed to do as a student.
And you're saying tenacity is what can get you through.
Absolutely.
I love that. Now, what about being a woman and being a district attorney? But I know you said you don't really think of it that way.
I don't.
And you don't see it that way. So maybe we won't talk much about that. But I'm just wondering, are there other DAs who are female that you can kind of reach out and talk to, get support from?
Many elected female district attorneys across the state, and I have lots of colleagues that I do bounce things off of from time to time. I was honored to be the first female elected to that position in Victoria County, but Victoria County has seen lots of fantastic female leadership, so I'm certainly not the first, just the first in that role.
Right, and won't likely be the last.
I hope not.
Absolutely. Now, is this something, though, too, about the last? Is this something that you it's an elected position.
It is.
So there's no guarantees. It's not like so kind of what does that look like when you're having to, go through an election process?
Well, I think that you always serve at the whim of the constituents. And so as long as you're doing the job that the people of the community think you ought to be doing, then you're up for a good opportunity to continue doing the job. But it's never a guarantee.
See, because election, that scares me. I feel like I have a good relationship with the community, but to be elected, and all of the stress and all of the the competitiveness. I'm not very competitive, and the signs and all that great stuff. And so the role and the position that you're in, you have to be reelected every 4 or 2 years.
4 years.
Every 4 years.
Yes.
So how long have you been our district attorney?
I've been the district attorney for 3 years now, so I'm coming up on that
so
process
you're coming
again.
up again. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness gracious. So what are some of the questions that you get from the community? Let's say let's get out of the role of district attorney. What does the district attorney's office? What kind of questions do you get frequently?
Well, for people that aren't familiar with how the district attorney's office works, basically we are the prosecutor. We represent the state in all criminal trials,
all
basically.
Criminal trials.
Ranging from Class C misdemeanors.
Give me a Class C misdemeanor example.
So a speeding ticket, if it were issued by the sheriff's office or the Department of Public Safety, you're going to land in a Justice of the Peace Court here in Victoria County.
Yes, ma'am.
So we represent those cases all the way up through the most serious felony cases, murder cases, capital murder cases, all of those things. So it's a broad range.
We had sort of talked off air, too, about how many cases are presented to the office a year.
So primarily, we have 3 law enforcement agencies in our community that present cases. There are others that do, but most often it would be the Victoria Police Department, the Victoria County Sheriff's Office, and the Texas Department of Public Safety. And we are presented thousands of cases every year that our office reads one by one by one and makes an intake decision on. Is the case viable to go forward in the court system? If it's a felony case, it has to go in front of a grand jury. If it's a misdemeanor case and it meets all of the elements, then the prosecutors assigned to the misdemeanor department can accept that case and file it directly.
Now, are you the attorney for all of those cases, or do you work with the Office of Attorneys?
So we have 9 prosecutors in the office, myself included.
Okay.
And I oversee the great work that team does, but I do not know what they do on a day-to-day basis in every single case. I couldn't possibly. So you have to surround yourself with good people, and they're doing a great job.
Well, I think that's awesome. I'm glad that you shouted out to them because, it does really take a team.
Our
a
support
very
staff
effective
is just
team.
as important. So there's 28 of us total in the office, and I have some fine men and women on board.
And one of the things that we had talked about too about a frequently asked question is, what was it? It was the frequently asked question was, can you give advice over the phone?
Yes. So people do call sometimes and want to know if our office can give them advice. And generally the answer is no. They have to seek out private legal counsel. Now, if it relates to their own criminal case, of course, if they're a defendant, we can't give them advice. They have to seek that out from their defense attorney. And if it's a citizen in the community that has a legal issue, if it relates to a criminal matter, we can kind of guide them. But basically, our standard answer is you must report a crime to law enforcement first.
Right.
Law enforcement will investigate that crime, and if it meets the elements of a case, that they will present it to our office for review and then filing. And so there's several steps that must occur, before it gets to the point where we can really talk to them one-on-one about a case.
Right. Well, and I was going to say, of course, I know that you are very active in the community.
Yes.
I wondered how many people in any particular fundraising event sneak over to you and ask you for advice.
I get my ear bent quite a bit, and that's okay. I don't mind, and I gently point people in the right direction.
Right. No, I was going to say you've always been so open and kind, to the community, but I bet you that is, something that you run into almost at every event or anytime you're doing anything. Now, you had said something previously about sometimes bad people do bad things, sometimes good people
do some dumb things.
Right. And that's kind of the spectrum of the cases that you see as well.
Sure. So, one of the misunderstandings that people have about your elected prosecutor is that our sole job is to seek convictions. And that really isn't. The Code of Criminal Procedure actually says that a prosecutor's job is to seek justice, not just convictions. And so sometimes the just result is a conviction in any given case. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's a diversion. Sometimes the case doesn't meet the elements of the law and has to be declined. And so there are so many considerations that take place before a person is filed on in the criminal justice system and ultimately prosecuted. So a lot of moving parts.
Right. Seek justice.
Seek justice.
Because everybody has an opinion. Everybody's bringing you their concerns. Everybody has their thoughts. Yes, I see what you're saying.
And we're the gatekeeper, the umpire, if you will. Mm-hmm. And there's always going to be one side of that equation that's not happy. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes that, and I understand that. I embrace that. I know that's how it goes. But we definitely one of the biggest things that we try to discern on the front end. Is this a bad person that's done a bad thing, or is this a good person who's done a dumb thing or a bad thing? Sometimes good people mess up. And, it's not everybody's going to be treated equally. And the criminal justice system cannot be a cookie-cutter approach. There are unique facts and circumstances for every case that we have to consider.
Does anything in particular come to mind when it comes to unique cases that you can talk about? Without
not really.
Okay, well, no, that's fine.
I just was kind of one of the ethical considerations.
Right.
I can't discuss ongoing cases, of course. There's some common threads about lots of the cases that we come across. It's no secret, I guess, in the community that I'm very passionate about rehabilitation.
Right.
I think there's an appropriate place for that, and I think because that has been so widely publicized that people think that maybe I'm soft on some things,
right?
And that couldn't be further from the truth. We aggressively prosecute and put many people in prison that need to be in prison. But there are definitely a group of people in our community that are struggling with some issues that, warrant
mental illness
absolutely.
And drug addiction and those types of things.
So we think that it's silly to recycle those people without at least giving them an opportunity to fix what got them to the criminal justice system in the first place.
To begin with, yes, absolutely. Now, what about crime? Can we speak a little bit about that? Like,
sure.
Are you seeing an uptick in...
The chief of police shared an article with City Council a few months ago that in 2020 major crime had dropped. I think that's obviously good news. There has been an uptick in some juvenile crime, but that has been across the nation. And
because school was out.
I
see what you're saying, yes.
Too much idle time on young, mischievous hands. And so definitely we're dealing with that, but not unlike other communities in our area.
Well, now we're hearing a lot about human trafficking.
Yes.
Are those the types of cases that you would prosecute as well?
Absolutely. Now, that's a federal issue mostly, but there are some state-related charges that could be leveled against human traffickers, most definitely. And we're definitely seeing that.
Well, and then let's educate the community about what state and federal. What are those differences?
Well, the immigration process, by and large, is a federal issue, and so it's not a state enforcement issue. There's been a lot of, political banter on both sides of the fence about how that issue should be addressed and can be addressed. But it's a problem. It certainly is stretching the resources thin of the county, particularly the sheriff's office, to, try to intercept and apprehend people coming through our community.
Yes, we've had several sheriffs from different local counties talking about it
on the mind of people in the community, and I recognize that. The human trafficking certainly is a state-level offense that we can prosecute, but more often than that, it's difficult to find, people bail out and they're long gone before we catch up with the person that was actually responsible for bringing those people through our community. So, evading arrest, trespassing, there's all sorts of other things that can be prosecuted related to those cases.
Right. Well, thank you for that clarification.
Sure.
So I've got a couple of fun things too.
Fun things. All
fun
right.
things. If you could be anything else, what would you be?
Well, I still am a teacher, which is kind of cool. I get to teach in the police academy, and so I still...
Oh, do you really?
I do. It's great.
Okay, wait. Stop right there. Let's talk about teaching at the police. Yes. Yeah. Stop the press. Tell me a little bit about teaching at the police academy.
I've been on the advisory board for the police academy for the last 13 years, I think, and have been actively teaching in the academy for 7 or 8 years. I teach a class called Courtroom Demeanor and Testimony, and so those are the basics for officers when they reach a point where inevitably every officer is going to be subpoenaed to testify at trial.
Yes.
And some of them will tell you that is more unnerving than being up against a bad guy in a dark alley any day of the week.
Sure, absolutely. Well, and that leads to a really great question, which is, did you always have that, that thing inside of you that you could get up in front of people and argue your point, or is that something that you learned along the way?
Well, I think I did have a knack early on. I was kind of that nerd. I'm a big nerd at heart.
You are the second
school nerd
person I've interviewed, and the second person then who said that they were nerds.
Was the first David Murphy?
Yes, it was.
He is my nerd hero. So.
I love that. That's awesome.
David and his lovely wife, Tammy, and I go back almost 40 years from grade school.
Oh, really?
Yeah, middle school. I've known Tammy since middle school. And
oh, my
David
goodness.
also.
You know what? Then my third podcast definitely needs to be someone that you guys know.
Oh.
They've got to be in the nerd group.
We can find somebody in the nerd group. We definitely can. No, they are great people. I'm the oldest of 4 siblings.
Yes.
And so I played school a whole lot when I was a kid. made worksheets and did things, tortured my younger brothers and sisters, let's be honest.
I'm the oldest too. I hear you, girl. I hear you, girlfriend.
So I always enjoyed that. But as far as getting up and talking in front of people, I think that isn't something that was ever, I could do that with some ease.
Sure.
And obviously
it's that tenacity.
Yeah, I guess.
Have you ever stumbled?
Oh, well, of course. Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
there's times that I feel like, as much as we've been on air and we're doing these things, it still surprises me sometimes that I stumble, even if I'm not the most nervous person.
We are all human.
In the room.
We goof up. We all have off days.
So going back to when you were younger and you decided to become a teacher, you said a big part of that was you were raising a family. Mm-hmm. How often did you consider law? Meaning, in my mind, it's always that burning in the back of my mind that, am I really doing what I was born to do?
Right.
So what was it, in the back of your mind that kept telling you, hey, let's get back to it? Because it's a lot of work. Let's talk about law school. Let's talk about the years that you have to spend in education, and it's rigorous. And I hear that the Texas bar is like the hardest to pass.
That is what I hear as well. It was definitely not for the faint of heart. Back when I took it, it's a 3-day test, and so it's definitely a challenge.
Definitely a
challenge. Came through okay the first time around, thank goodness. But no, it's definitely an intimidating prospect for a lot of people that go into law school.
Now, what does your husband do?
My husband is retired corrections side of law enforcement. So he was with the Victoria County Sheriff's Office for a number of years, and then went to the Texas Commission on Jail Standards. And so he's retired from that, and in his retirement years has done something completely different. So
tell me a little bit about your children.
So I have a 23-year-old daughter and a 20-year-old son, and they're great people. I'm really proud of them.
Now, do either of them you think are going to follow in their grandfathers and their mother's footsteps?
Not yet. I don't see that happening just yet. But no, really, really proud of them.
Good. Oh, that's awesome. And do you ever think about being a grandma, what that's going to be like?
Oh, gosh. I think I'm way, way too young to be called grandma, but I know that obviously I could be. No, I think
that one day that
really
will come.
Wonderful blessing someday.
And you'll be an awesome teacher.
I will, yeah. I'll be like, oh, grandma. I'm sure I'll get a lot of eye rolls, right?
Oh, no, not at all, I bet. Well, you know what? It's just that part, that circle of life where I think especially true as women, we're caregivers, and we're doing, a million different things, in our lifetime. But I got to tell you, being a grandma is really awesome.
I have no
doubt. And I
doubt.
think that you will be a fun grandma.
Well, you are sweet.
I know you've got lots of years ahead of you.
I've got a wonderful group of nieces and nephews. So I've got 12 nieces and nephews. Well, no, I take that back. So 10
right,
total.
10.
And I'm kind of the silly, goofy aunt, I think, of the bunch.
Fun aunt. I knew this about you.
I tried.
I knew because you wear vertical stripes.
Right. Guilty.
There you go. Absolutely. Well, kind of give us a little bit more insight into the district attorney's office.
Okay.
Tell me a little bit about what the day in the life of, yourself and your team looks like.
Gosh, well, I can say that it's never the same. The days, and if you plan a day, you can just toss that the minute you walk in the door, because it is an ever-changing, ever-evolving responsibility. And things happen, obviously, in the community that I have to jump into gear sometimes and attend to. Right. And those are usually very tragic situations. But some weeks we are in docket call. We are handling the cases in the courtroom that have been presented to us by law enforcement. Some days we're in our office reading those cases. We lay eyes and physically read every single case presented to us. That's incredibly time-consuming, but very important part of what we do. We're meeting with witnesses. We're meeting with victims. We're, trying to stay involved in the community. We're working with other community agencies to combat some of the problems that we see. Mm-hmm. And I mentioned it a minute ago, but there's an overwhelming nexus between substance abuse and many of the cases presented to us, not just the obvious ones, the drug and alcohol-related cases, but many of the theft cases, many of the domestic violence cases, range the gamut and have some tie, underneath.
I was going to say,
drug and
what
alcohol
percentage?
Abuse. Oh gosh,
do you think?
I don't even know that I could put a number on it.
Right.
But there is a distinct nexus to most of the cases in our office related to that issue.
Mm-hmm. And that's probably why rehabilitation is so important to you, because you're seeing the percentage and you're like, here's a common denominator over and over again.
And even more disheartening than that, we see the same faces over and over again. So we prosecute someone, they're found guilty, they're put on probation. Often they come back. There's a high level of recidivism among people that have substance abuse issues if those issues are not addressed.
Right. You're saying, if they're not rehabilitated.
Right. So it's, long term, there have been numerous studies out there, but recidivism is reduced if you take the time to address the underlying issue, especially with people in the early throes of some sort of addiction, that if you can catch them before they're too far gone and point them in the right direction, they are still held accountable. That's the misnomer about specialty courts. Some people think that rehabilitative aspect is somehow a soft pass, and it isn't. It's hard work, and people have to be committed to that to have that opportunity. So we want to reduce the faces that we see on a repeated basis. We want to save the taxpayer money in doing so, because rehabilitation in the long term costs a whole lot less than throwing somebody in jail and throwing away the key. And ultimately, those people that do go to jail for those issues come out without those underlying needs having been met, and they're right back in the community doing the same thing again. So it just doesn't make sense to not try to break that cycle somewhere.
And do you visit with them?
Of course.
Truly have conversations. And
that's one of the really cool things about the specialty court model, is that when they come to court, if you will, they are meeting with a roundtable panel, the judge, the prosecutor, the defense attorney, the treatment professional, people from probation, and we're all having a conversation about the progress that they're making, whether or not they're meeting all of the requirements of them in being on that special type of probation. And if they aren't, there's some tough talk about, look, this is your chance. You make it or break it. Ultimately, there's a jail sentence hanging over those folks' heads. And so they have that extra incentive to get it together.
But they do have an opportunity.
They have an opportunity
to make changes as well.
Absolutely.
Well, again, I want to end it on a fun note. And I'm going to ask you, I'm so sorry, because I did sort of an inside joke about vertical stripes. You and I are friends. We both wore vertical stripes, and we were like, we know better, but darn it, sometimes you just want to break the rules.
Gosh, yeah, that was not a flattering look.
But you know what? So I'm going to ask you a feet to the fire question.
Feet to the fire.
What is one thing that most people might not know about you, Constance?
One thing that people would not know about me, now all of my friends know I'm not a very girly girl. Okay,
there you go. Okay, yeah. Not a girly girl.
Not a girly girl. So I like to dress up and be glamorous as much as the next girl. But I definitely have some kind of tomboyish habits. And
I love that.
Yeah. So
what do you think is your most tomboyish habit?
Oh gosh, I'm pretty handy with tools and can diagnose things wrong with my car. I usually know before my husband does what's wrong with my car.
Could you change your own oil in a car?
I could. It wouldn't be pretty. I could.
But you could.
Yeah, I could.
Oh my gosh, I want to fist bump you right now. Too bad you guys can't. That's awesome.
So for my first anniversary, I got a miter saw. That's what I wanted.
What?
And so when my husband told people that he was buying his wife on our 1-year anniversary, which was 27 years ago, by the way.
Oh, congratulations.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, we just celebrated our 28th. I wanted a miter saw so I could cut some wood and work on.
And are you good?
I was pretty good at it.
This is why we're friends. I'm actually really good with tools.
So the running joke during Hurricane Claudette is that there was a shed that we bought from Sears, one of those little flimsy do-it-yourself kind of assemble things. And my husband put it together initially, and the first little windstorm we had, it blew over, and it was in this rumbled up
disarray.
Pile. Yeah. So I, with my miter saw, built a frame and attached the pieces to the frame so that it would be hardier and we wouldn't have to just chunk it.
Oh my gosh!
Well, guess what? After Hurricane Claudette, it was the only thing standing in our backyard.
Oh my gosh!
It was built to last.
There you go. The ultimate she shed.
The ultimate she shed.
Oh.
That we actually later on, many years later, had to demolish with a tractor because it was so sturdy.
It was so sturdy. I love it. Oh, that was awesome.
So kind of again, nerd extension.
I love that. Well, Constance, FILLEY, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
And to our audience, thank you again so much for listening to the second episode ever of Town Square Talks Everything 361, sponsored by Victoria Air Conditioning. They are not comfortable until you are.